Hey,
Right, where do you want to start here? I've got your audio that
I'll do that later.
Well, we won't do that right now because it's not quite ready. We've got to clean it up a little bit because you're a little bit fruity when you address players and footy. You get back into footy speak, so we're cleaning that up. But
Hey, this was a great get from Mitch Cleary, our man,
It is.
the Maasai Warrior, who's on Channel Wisp, who I don't know how he got to sit down or track down Sonia Hood. I haven't heard from Sonia. She's the one that's been... She's been doing all of the heavy lifting around the Alastair Clarkson situation, apparently. So he caught up with her at the AFLW launch, I'm told, last night. Here's what she had to say on the whole Clarkson situation. So Sonia Hood, who's by the end of the weekend,
the end of the weekend, she said...
Not by the end of the week, by the end of the weekend, which is there's a difference.
I know, but Eddie on Classified said that he'd spoken to the manager, James Henderson, and he'd said that there would be a decision by the end of the week. So there's a little bit of wriggle room there somewhere. Now,
yeah, I think he'll take the weekend. He's over in Adelaide at the moment dealing with some personal stuff. So back today, which is Thursday. Anyway, irrespective of when he does.
from the outside though, how does it look to you?
I honestly have got no insight. And this is hand on heart. I couldn't tell you with any. I would be guessing if I knew which way I thought he would be going. I haven't spoken to he.
Do you think the timeline though it matches up? When you know Clarko really well. You and I both know him well. Okay, we've both worked with him. We know him well. Do you think the type of bloke that he is, he could be rushed into a decision within the space of 5 days, given that Essendon have only really joined the race for him?
I think he can make a decision by the end of the weekend, knowing how thorough he is in terms of what he needs to do. If he needs, for most people, the working day is 9 to 5. His working day is 5 till
whenever.
So he'll jam that much into the next few days if he needs to find out more information about Essendon, to make sure he's got the similar degree of information that he's got from the Bombers that he has with the Kangaroos. And, yeah, I think he can do that. So we'll just wait and see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised with either. And that's when you genuinely don't know. Neither of those. If he came out today and said, I'm going to North, I could see exactly why he would. Personally, I look at it and go, okay, what he goes to Essendon, there is an expectation of success and getting it right much earlier than there is if he goes to the Kangaroos.
Yep.
He can go to the Kangaroos, get his feet under that desk, and
given you'll get 3 years grace.
Oh yeah, well yeah, yep.
At least.
Yeah, but he can methodically go about it and be prepared to accept a bit of the pain in the short term, because when you go to the Bombers, there's a bit more of an expectation that, they're in finals footy not that long ago. And again, he's strong enough to deal with that too. He might just say, so what? Yeah. I'll tell you what the expectations are.
Yeah, you're right though. There's an impatience there that is building and building and building at Essendon that doesn't exist necessarily at North Melbourne.
Yeah.
And the volume of people that are associated with that impatience too.
I'll tell you what would be a factor for him, without, again, having spoken to him, is the volatility in the administration at both clubs.
Yeah.
That would be one of the key things determinants that he would need to be aware of and understand.
Yeah.
So you got a new president that's just wandered in. What's the president's relationship with the CEO? What's the board's relationship with the CEO, the president, and then at North Melbourne, there's talk around the CEO there, and has he been involved? Would appear not in the process. So all of those things would be where he's getting his teeth into right now.
Yeah. Also, there is a report. I don't exactly know, so I don't know who I can attribute this to. That new Essendon chairman David Barham met with, I think it might have been unclassified last night, that he met with, for the first time, Ben Rutten yesterday and told him that the club was, in fact, talking to Clarkson and Clarkson's people, but that didn't necessarily mean that he wouldn't be the coach going forward and he hadn't been sacked. If that is correct, what's your view about that?
Well, the first
Would that surprise you?
The first part just needs to happen 100% if they hadn't spoken to him. So if
the first part should have happened about 24 hours or 48 hours ago, would you think?
Exactly. But the chances of him, if this all doesn't pan out, well, you're still the coach. If that was the messaging, then that would be a farce.
Can you see a world in which that happens? They miss out on Clarkson and Ben Rutten is the coach again next year?
No. Can you?
No, I can't. No, I can't.
So tell him.
Yep.
And maybe they did, and they're just keeping mum and trying to keep it all in, all together, and he coaches out on the weekend, and then that's That's it. But anyway, we will watch. Everyone's speculating around it at the moment, and it all.
Because the thought there, just on that point though, the thought there would be that, okay, they miss out on Clarkson, then they have this external review, and the finding of that external review is that Ben Rutten is still the right person to coach, and then they continue on with him in 5 or 6 weeks' time. Like, I just can't see that timeline working out.
Well, you don't have an external review if you're chasing your coach.
Well, you do because, but if...
Well, what's the point of an external review if you say...
but David Noble's coming into St Kilda, right, to conduct what effectively would be an external review.
But
right?
they've got a coach.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand that. But Essendon currently have a coach as well. So the point would be that, you got the right coach, even after the external review.
No, because they've leapt to the end point before they've started the
Only
review.
because Clarko is available.
That's right.
That's what's driven them to this point.
So have your external review.
But if he's out of the equation, then you say, okay, well, let's have our external review. The coach is okay, and he's the right bloke to be there.
Oh, but...
So what if St Kilda go through the external review and David Noble says, well, hang on, I think the problem is your coach, Brett, hypothetically, is Brett Ratton, but he's already been reappointed.
Yeah, well, good luck with that, St Kilda. Because 6 weeks ago we made a decision to reappoint the coach before we did an external review.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you 100%.
Let's move on from this. Craig McRae has been a breath of fresh air, and this would play on the minds of all the clubs that are looking for new coaches. This is what it can happen if you get the right coach, or the circumstances at your footy club are open, just right there, sitting there open for a different sort of coach to come in and have an impact.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 100%. This is him talking to the
Would
boys.
any coach had this impact on Collingwood, or is it specifically the type of coach?
It's the type of coach. I think it's the confidence of the coach. It's the balance of the coach. It's the experience that the coach has had around football. It's his understanding of men that he's coaching.
Therein gives you an insight into perhaps why he's had this short-term success.
Yeah.
And that is the ability to read your playing group.
Mm.
That's one of the great skills. So you walk in and he goes, oh, gee, they're a bit tense, or they've been under not the Bucks, but by the end of it, there was a lot of speculation and the pressure and however Nathan dealt with it. But big figure and Eddie being there at Collingwood was always a club. And I think he sensed that. So he said, I've got to lighten the mood here. And it sometimes can take, and you can only talk from personal experience. We had a bit of that when Neil Danaher came in. We were last on the ladder, like hopelessly last. And his first meeting, he looked at us and he just went, one of the first things he said, he goes, boys, smile. It's not the end of the world. All right, we're on the bottom of the ladder. We're going to get to, and I'm looking at you all. You've all we must have all been had furrowed brows, thinking we're all losers. We're wooden spooners. He made such an impact in a short period of time because he read the room.
Yes, and it doesn't mean to say that he wasn't tough and hard.
No. In fact, he was the toughest and the hardest.
That's right, but he can still be the other part as well. Like, you can be firm, and you can still be like, you don't want to. You don't want to interpret what Craig McRae is saying there as that it's just all jovial, lighthearted, and people aren't held responsible for their actions.
No, so what you need,
you can have both
as a player. When you're in our instance or in their instance, is you need the person who's been put in charge to demonstrate to you that they've got a plan.
That's right,
and the plan is this: I want you to stop being down on yourselves and thinking that the world's going to end. And guess what? It'll get fixed because we're going to go to work. And then he smashed us. But enjoy the work because this is how we'll get better. And away you went.
I don't know whether you listened to Hodgie talking about Clarko yesterday, but the idea that what he would do, he'd come in and he'd say, okay, this is the way we're defending, right? And then at training, he would coach that and coach that and coach that. And if you continued to make the errors, then he would then say, okay, well, you can't be playing in my team until you actually get that part right. Yeah. If you look at Essendon and the way they've played over the last 4 years, you'd
it's
say
a perfect fit.
You'd say, well, somebody hasn't actually been doing that because I'm seeing those mistakes played over and over and over and over again. Where is the accountability to it all?
And all the review shows, which have got the easiest, cheapest seats because we're all care no responsibility, but you go, and we showed a thing on Monday night throughout the year, from the first game when they lost by 60 points through to the last game when they lost by 84, and in between the post game. Oh, we've got to get better at this, and we're not good at that, and that would suggest that message is not being adhered or upheld.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about the back six here. We're talking about everybody when you don't have the ball.
Exactly right. Jeremy Cameron's going to be okay. That's the other thing that's come out.
He's going to play this weekend?
No, not this weekend.
Right.
They've got the top spot sewn up, so
Right.
there's no great urgency. They play West Coast at home, but
It's a minor one.
then he'll have the week off, and then they say that he'll be right for the first final, so that's good news. DeGoey and Ginnivan look like they're going to be okay for Sunday's massive match, or they're saying they're a chance.
That's right. Tom Brown also reported last night on 7 that Dan Hanbury is likely to announce his retirement, or St Kilda will announce his retirement before the weekend. How is that whole recruitment of Dan Hanbury going to be viewed?
No, that didn't work because he didn't get to play.
16 or 17 games I think he's played over 4 years.
Didn't work. They paid good big
money for it.
And when you pay that sort of money, you got to get out on the park. And we know Dan is one of the hardest working players I ever watched. But his body failed him at the wrong time, and they didn't get bang for their buck.
Did they do their due diligence at the time, though? Because the suggestion is from Sydney people that they thought that at that time they were actually suggesting to him that he should retire and he shouldn't take the deal, shouldn't go to St Kilda.
Right. Yeah, and then there was the whole connections between people at St Kilda and the family, all that sort of stuff was thrown into the mix. But hey, it was worth the punt, but maybe not at the price.
Worth the punt because when you look at what he could do, and even a couple of weeks ago when he played, that type of player, they weren't getting just his playing ability, but a style of play that needed to be something that perhaps he could influence other players with. But he just hasn't been able to play often enough to influence anyone. You can do all you like, behind the scenes and be a great club man, all that type of thing, but most of the time you're doing rehab and you're away from the training group.
The AFLW had their Captain's Day, which is always a big. Whenever you see, from the men's point of view, when the Captain's Day was held, you knew that the footy was just upon us. So you're getting that same sense of excitement now with the 18-team competition, the AFLW. All the captains had gathered yesterday. They'd put all the questions, who's going to win their medal and all that sort of stuff. Are you getting that sense? Because just hang on. But the timing of this, they're trying to find a slot for the AFLW where they can get the due, respect and the eyeballs. And I know people laugh at this, but this is Craig Hutchison's idea, is to, at the time of the year when most people are interested in footy, we play the least amount of games, which is the finals. That's why it's been shoehorned in. Yep. It'll be on in the bye week, so there's no footy except the AFLW and all the VFL and everything else. Do you think this is going to launch, not that it hasn't already been launched, but take it to the next level?
That remains to be seen. It will get more traction next week for sure because there's no AFL game. There's no AFL finals lead up next week. So it's going to get a lot more traction next week.
So they've got the game that shifted?
They'll have that, standalone next Thursday night. They'll have all that leading into the weekend. So there's going to be a lot more exposure for the AFLW than what there would normally be. And then, but it does get lost. Last night gets lost in all of the machinations of a final round of AFL.
Yeah, so let's take it for what it is. It's got its spot. It's going to launch as big as it has in a slot where there's no AFL footy. Then it will get lost, unfortunately, or fortunately, because the finals dominate from that point of view. But once that grand final's over,
that's right.
Then they'll own that space. There's a lull after the grand final, and we turn our attention, most of us, to the races and the cricket. We keep bemoaning the fact that the cricket starts later and later. So they may get their space.
Yeah, no, I think they'll find their slot. I really do think they'll find their slot.
So you're happy with the timing?
No, I think the timing's great. But if you ask me the question about, it hitting the mark, the launch last night, then it is lost still in what's going on around AFLW. But they will find some space.
Yeah. And it is said most years that this is going to be the busiest. Well, I think this year will be.
Will be.
I don't think there's any doubt about that, given some of the names that are coming out of contract or are still in contract but may not be at their clubs.
Yeah, you're going to be busy too. A lot of people wanting to know whether or not you're available over the next month to deliver a motivational speech at their football club. We'll just take all those numbers and I'll get you to sift through those post-show, okay?
Calculating Cal Twomey from AFL.com.au has inside trading live on the AFL website and the app. Got the latest contract, trade and draft news. Let's get through as many names and they start to get sent in straight away. The minute we mention Cal Twomey, they all come through. They want to know what's going on. So let's get punchy with this. Hello, Calculating.
Good morning, Tim and Gary. How are you guys?
Well, all the better for speaking with you. You're a very busy man, ear to the ground, so much going on. You tell me that Bradley Hill, there's names being bandied now.
Yeah, he has 3 years to go on his contract, but my understanding is he's open to a potential trade, which of course would be his 4th AFL club across his career. Now, had 3 years at the Saints and been shuffled around different roles. Really hasn't got going clearly to his previous form and has a link clearly with Alastair Clarkson as well, 3-time premiership coach at Hawthorn under him. So I think if Clarkson joined North Melbourne, of course, it's 50-50 at the moment. I think Hill could have an interest in also heading there. The complication, clearly, with all of this is his remaining 3 years on his deal at $900,000 or so a year.
Big wedge.
Yeah.
900. Did you say $900,000 a year?
Yeah, around that for the next 3 years as well.
Okay, so St Kilda, are they open to this, or is it just Bradley Hill that's open to this and wants to pursue it?
Well, I think at the moment it's Bradley Hill is open to it, but we wait and see how the next month or so evolves, I think, Tim.
When there's a team that's travelling very well, which the Swans are, there's always some players that can't get a look in, so other clubs tend to look at their list even more closely. So what are we hearing out of the Swanners?
Yeah, there's a guy called Lewis Milliken who's been off the radar a little bit, Gary, since the McCartan brothers have held down the key defensive post, but was a key part of their side in previous years. Hasn't played this year, signed till the end of next year, but failed to break into their team. He's only 26 and shapes as a potential key defensive option for clubs, and yeah, he's open to a trade as well, and clubs are aware of that. The Swans are also going about re-signing Harry Cunningham on a new deal too, a free agent there, so he's set to stay. But yeah, key defenders are worth their weight in gold. They are the new ruck merry-go-round. We've spoken about that a couple of times this year, and clubs are really searching for them.
Will Gould is also on that Sydney list, hasn't been able to break in, highly rated under 18 backman. What about him? Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting one. He came to the Swans as a maturely built player. And he was a great kick, played in a sample premiership on his way through to the Swans and was drafted in that sort of 20s stage of the draft a couple of years ago. Hasn't been able to be a consistent player for him. Look, I'm not sure if there'll be interest in him or not, but I think the likelihood is that he stays at the Swans.
This appears to be an annual conversation around the future of Luke Bruce, but is it uncertain at Hawthorn as to whether or not he'll go on next year?
You're right, it is annual, but I think the clubs, again, will look at him, and his name does come up a lot at trade time. I think clubs are looking at him and knowing that there's a chance to be able to get him. He's had a super season, kicked 40 goals and been the Hawks' leading goal kicker. Look, for me, he's the type of player who can play several more years. He wants to play on beyond next year. So he's signed to the Hawks next year, but he wants to play on beyond that. Also got another flag in his sights. Now, he knocked back a move to GWS last year on the final day of the trade period, but the clubs are aware he could look at his opportunities in the upcoming off-season.
Gunston?
Sorry, who was that?
Jack Gunston?
Oh, Jack Gunston. It's out of contract, so a little bit different, free agent. So if he was to move, he's able to just pick up and go. The Lions have been linked to him as well. Lions have a bit going on. Obviously, been linked to Josh Dunkley as well. They've looked at, obviously, Lance Franklin as an option once that one popped up a couple of weeks ago. So a bit going on there, but I think that'll play out over the next couple of weeks.
Gary, if you were Melbourne, would you ask a question about Jack Gunston?
Yep, straight up.
What would that question be?
You want to come play with us? I would ask it for sure.
How many years do you think he's got left in him?
A couple. He's missed 2 years of footy with his back. He seems like he's got that sorted. So he's 31, but he's got 29 years of kilometres on the clock.
Talking about sorting stuff out, Cal, Jacinta Franklin, is she now an accredited AFL player agent?
She's got it. We spoke about it 2 months ago, guys, and put this on the radar.
You did.
Going for the AFL agent accreditation. Well, she's got it. She's passed the test now. An official agent, accredited player agent, means she can directly sign players and negotiate deals with AFL and AFLW players. At this stage, she's not looking at taking on any players in any management sense, but is able to do at this point. I'm just on this as well. Josh Gablich reporting as well that Collingwood and GWS former defender Heath Shaw is now contemplating a career as a player manager as well. So lots of former players in the industry as agents, of course, Scotty Lucas and Adam Ramanauskas and Brett Deledio as well among them. So maybe Heath is the next one on the card.
Marty Pascas. Well, why would you get accredited if you weren't thinking about actually becoming an agent then?
Well, that's a good question. It's part of her personal development, I'm told. That's sort of been part of the interest in doing that, and maybe down the track there's some opportunities as well for her to do that.
There was a suggestion too that that she can, or maybe looking in the Indigenous space, being a particular advocate for those that are looking to get a start in not only AFL footy, in sport in general. So maybe that's something that they're looking at as a business. She's
got a lot of business interests, there's no doubt about that, and quite entrepreneurial in that space. I'm told she's not directly involved in the buddy negotiations, though, of course, which he's put on hold until the end of the season.
No, she is the most directly involved. She might not be doing it face to face, but her opinion would be almost the most important. Okay, what about the number 1 draft pick? Did you suggest that they might be looking at it, whoever gets it? What's the ruse?
I think this is my thoughts, and I think that there's more value in doing this than before. This is the year to be putting the number 1 draft pick on the trade table. There's a few factors in that. Will Ashcroft is the obvious number 1 pick, and obviously he's unavailable to clubs really. He's a father-son, and he will go to the Lions. Now, the other contender for the number 1 slot has been George Wardlaw, but he missed the championships with a hamstring injury, did another hamstring injury, and then on Saturday returned at school level and did another hamstring in the first 5 minutes. So that's added a bit of intrigue to this discussion now. So I think if it's West Coast or if it's North Melbourne, whoever has it by the end of round 23, they should be actively putting the number 1 pick up for grabs and saying to other clubs, we're listening. What can we split it for?
Nice.
What can we turn one great pick into 2 really good ones or whatever it is? So, of course, it takes a buyer and a player that a club is going to want to push up the board for, but I think this is the year to do it. Hasn't been traded, Gary, since 2001. Maybe that's a cautionary tale with the Luke Hodge situation.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Talking to Calculating Cal Twomey from AFL.com.au. I know you spoke about this bloke a few weeks ago. It's gone quiet. Cam Zurhaar. Is he waiting to find out what happens at North Melbourne before he makes a decision about his future and what he would like to do going forward?
Yes, in short, yes. I think that's exactly where it sits at the moment. Wait for the coach and see where that plays out. Look, he's got an offer there from North Melbourne. There's interest from Essendon. I think there's interest from a number of clubs in Victoria in particular. I don't think he's got necessarily a pull to go back to Western Australia as some other West Australians have had and do have, but that could still be a possibility, particularly with West Coast. But I think that's one that we'll see some conclusion to in the next couple of weeks once we know who's coaching North Melbourne. But they're obviously really keen to keep him. The other one to keep in mind as well, guys, Riley Beveridge reporting today that Collingwood has its sights on Adelaide big man Billy Frampton. So that's an interesting one as well from a whole lot of areas. He's been used as a ruck forward and back.
Collingwood, did you say?
Port Adelaide.
Yeah, Collingwood.
Yeah, Collingwood, yeah.
Like they got Brody
Adelaide.
Grundy and Cox and Cameron, that club.
Well, this is the thing, Gary. It does add some further sort of intrigue behind the plan on Brody Grundy, doesn't it? With his deal and what they're going to do there. They're going to be very active. The Pies have got Dan McStay coming in, Bobby Hill likely coming in, interest in Tim Taranto and now Billy Frampton as well.
I'm glad you mentioned Taranto because the suggestion out there that I've heard is that he's going to go to Richmond, but you're saying that Collingwood is still very much in the frame for him? I think the Tigers have edged ahead because they have had interest in Jacob Hopper. I think if you're putting a market on it at the moment that the Geelong would be favourites for Hopper, and that would leave the Tigers to go a little bit more all in on Taranto. But I do think the Pies have had interest in him for a fair while now. But they do have a lot going on though, so and a lot might depend as well in terms of salary cap space. What happens with Jordan Zagoe in that chase as well?
Hey, the APS final was last week. APS played the AGSV rep game this week, so there's still a fair bit for recruiters to have a look at.
There is. There's always stuff to have a look at, and the NAB League as well. Big game on Saturday between Oakley and Sandringham, so a few guns running around in that one. It was a good grand final last week, Gary. Caulfield Grammar and Brighton Grammar was a draw. So
a draw?
Drawn premiership. Yeah, it was a draw, 96 apiece. The Wizard, our man, Nick the Wizard Watson, kicked 4 goals in the first half, and then Cam McKenzie, who's a top 10 pick for this year, was outstanding for Brighton Grammar in the second half. So
45-point deficit Brighton overcame.
Yes, you're right. And Clarko was there, Adam Uze was there. There was players from AFL clubs everywhere, left, right and centre. So it was quite the crowd.
And Cal, just before we let you go too, you know that Gary's a big fan of music. Where should we wander this week? We want to see a live band somewhere. Is there anything happening around town that we should have a look at?
I don't know if they're playing live anytime soon, but there's a band called DMA's new song out, Gary. So come out last night. Mine and I think your producer Joel Brooks' favourite band as well. So get on that.
Flying Rats toss bag. There's just one come in. Miles Bergman from Port Adelaide. Is he on the market?
I'm not sure he's as on the market as has been reported. He's got a year to go on his contract. I would struggle to see him move. I mean, they're going to lose Carl Amon as a wingman. And part of that planning, of course, has been that they've just picked up Miles Bergman, Josh Sinn in the last couple of drafts, and of course Xavier Durden a couple of years before that. So they're trying to breed through that new sort of class of wingmen with Carl Amon leaving. I'd be surprised if he left.
Calculating you're a superstar.